Today we're chatting all about Joy's quick trip to Dallas, a fun long weekend getaway that proves you do not need a huge vacation to make meaningful family memories. We're diving into where she stayed, what she did, what worked well, and why a short trip can sometimes be exactly what your family needs. Welcome to the Savvy Travel Moms podcast. If you are a mom who wants to travel more with your family without spending a fortune, you're in the right place. I'm Michelle, the bougie one.
Joy, the practical one. We are two moms with different travel styles, but the same savvy mindset. In our show, we will break down family-friendly travel tips, points and miles, and realistic strategies that fit into a busy mom life. From hotel robes and room service to free breakfast and budget wins, we will help you turn everyday life into unforgettable family memories.
Real moms, real travel, real strategies. Today's episode is a fun one because we're talking about a quick and doable getaway to Dallas. Sometimes we think travel has to be big, elaborate, and an expensive production to be worth it. But Joy's trip is such a good reminder that even a long weekend can feel refreshing, memorable, and totally worthwhile. So if you've been wanting to plan something simple, realistic, and still really fun for your family, this episode should give you some great ideas and encouragement. I am so excited for this, Joy, because I have only ever been to Dallas for a flight. I've never actually been out to explore, so I'm super excited to hear about your trip.
Now, have you ever left the airport in Dallas? Do we count this as like a city you've actually been to, or are we still never left the airport mode?
No, I do not count it. So we did end up one time our flight was canceled, and well, no, we took $600 per person to fly out the next day because they overbooked it.
Got
And
it.
we hardly had any time. We had already been at the airport for like 6 hours because the flight kept getting delayed and delayed until they told us that it was overbooked. So by the time we got to the hotel, it was like 6 o'clock at night. And we just decided to like stay in the hotel, watch TV, and then we had to leave the next morning. So yes, I have never done anything in Dallas, but I really want to.
I know. I think it's always funny because, my mom and I have this rule. She says if you don't leave the airport, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
So it's always the thing that we talk about. Can I really count that I've been to that
Yep.
state or that country or
Yeah.
not?
I know.
No,
So what do you think? Does that count if you don't leave the airport, or even if you do, like we stayed overnight, but we've never done anything in Texas? Would you count that as like you've been to Texas?
I mean, I would probably count it as been to Texas because you were in the state, you left the airport,
Yeah.
but you didn't really do anything, so you can definitely still go back. But in terms of like state count, I would absolutely count it if you left the airport.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I have one more state on my list than I thought I do.
It's like the whole driving through piece, right? If you just
Yes.
drive through, does it count? Well, did you stop at a gas station? Did you see things as you were driving? Yes, I think it counts.
Oh my
Granted.
gosh. You're like, quit, guys. Let's go to the rest stop. We got to cross the state off our list. What did you do
I count
in
it.
Texas? I went to the bathroom in Texas. Does that count?
I mean, I stop at exit 41 in Kentucky all the time because that's the halfway point between here and my parents, and that's our meeting spot. So my kids can count Kentucky, even though they have not really been anywhere else in Kentucky other than straight up the interstate.
That's awesome. I love that.
Okay, so let's jump
super
in now
fun.
that I've already digressed and off-railed
Yes.
us just to start
I
off.
love it.
So Dallas, yes, we had a long weekend in Dallas. And how it worked out is my kids ended up they have this 4-day weekend every February. And I didn't have anything planned for the weekend. And it was probably the end of November, December. And my husband and I were talking about it. And I just looked at him and I said, I really want to kind of get away. And we have this credit on our Sapphire Reserve card that we need to at least book something before the end of the year if we're going to take advantage of this credit. So we looked at cities and he gave me some parameters. His parameters were it had to be warm. So we needed to go
Love
south,
that.
but we couldn't leave the country. So he didn't want to go like Caribbean or Mexico anywhere for the short weekend. And It needed to be somewhere that we can get easy flights to because we didn't want to have like huge long travel days since it was only going to be a really short weekend trip for us. And I knew that I had a stash of AA and Alaska miles. So that was my starting point. I looked at what direct flights I can get from Nashville on American or Alaska to get us like super easy, affordable, not crazy miles per person that we can get to somewhere that was south and warmer and not Florida because we've been to Florida like a million times, so we didn't want Florida
Mm,
again.
yep.
So those were our parameters. And then I went and started looking at our Sapphire Reserve card, it comes with an edit credit. So the edit hotel collection is like they're super bougie. They're your style, Michelle. They're like super bougie, really fancy hotels with robes and room service.
Love
And
it.
I was trying to find something that we didn't have to spend a ton out of pocket on top of that credit. Um, Plus, we still had a $500 travel credit on that card because it was part of our
Yep.
sign up bonus when we got the card earlier in 2025 and we hadn't used that portion either. So I basically
Yep.
had $750 to work with and needed to find a hotel that was within that perimeter or just a little bit over. And Dallas, all of the stars aligned for us. So I
That's
found
awesome.
flights like that were an amazing deal, direct flights to and from Nashville to Dallas because it is a hub for American. And then the Fairmont Hotel downtown Dallas was
Yeah.
$100 for 2 nights. And we were able to use that credit. And I think I paid $11.86 out of pocket on that reservation.
Yay.
So that's how we settled on Dallas. It just ended up being this perfect little storm of all these parameters that we had to set based on our limitations, and
I
it worked
love
out.
that. Were there any other cities that came in like close second that you remember, or was it literally everything else just kept striking out and Dallas was it, basically?
Well, I was actually trying to first get my husband to go to New York or Chicago because I found
Yep.
some rooms that would work with the edit credit for that weekend, but he didn't want to go cold. So then when
Oh
I had to go
no.
south, and you start looking at family-friendly cities that aren't Florida, right? Because we go to
Yep.
Florida a lot. He's from Florida, so we just didn't want to do that. Dallas just really popped up as a great option to go to because I mean, I can't go too much farther south because then you're getting into longer flights and you lose that
That's
direct
true.
flight ability.
Yep.
New Orleans was on there, but I don't know if my kids would really love New Orleans, and I think it was too close to Mardi Gras for my liking to take my children.
Yeah. Yep.
So, nope, Dallas was just kind of where it all converged at.
Yay. Oh, that's exciting. So let's start with your first day. So you land in Dallas. Did you rent a car or did you Uber everywhere for the trip? Okay, let's jump right into day one. So you get off the plane, you're going to head to your hotel. Did you guys rent a car for this trip or did you Uber everywhere?
Good question. We actually ended up renting a car, which
Oh,
looking
okay.
back, I'm torn on if we really needed it or not. The main reason why I rented a car is because I also wanted to spend a day in Fort Worth. And on our original itinerary that I had planned, we were going to show up on Friday, spend, because we landed at like 11 or 30 or 12 on Friday. So we were just going to spend kind of that day exploring around downtown close to the hotel. Saturday was going to be our Fort Worth day. We were going to drive, and I had a whole list of activities to do in Fort Worth. And then Sunday was going to be like do a couple more things in Dallas before we head back to the airport. Well, a couple of days before we left, I looked at the weather and it was going to be storming like
No.
all day Saturday, like torrential downpour. And since Fort Worth is a lot of outside activities at the stockyards and a lot of their parks and things are all outside, we had to completely pivot our trip. So once we arrived on Friday, we ended up hopping in the car and driving straight over to Fort Worth to do the stockyards. Um,
How
which
fun.
yeah, it was really cool. Like, it was smaller than I expected. and I didn't know how much time to plan for that. I had a whole lot of things in Fort Worth I wanted to do, but I ended
Hmm.
up having to scratch a lot of them off because of the weather and just time commitments. But we ended up spending about 3 to 4 hours at the stockyards. We got there, we had lunch at this restaurant called H3 Ranch, which really
Mm.
fun backstory. I don't know if you guys listened to the Harry Potter episode, you learned that I had a family castle. Like my ancestors are from Scotland. So the H3 Ranch in Fort Worth are actually from the same clan in Scotland that my family is
Oh,
from. So
oh,
I had researched, my mom had been there and told me I had to eat there. So we ate lunch at the H3 Ranch, and you walk in and they have this whole wall of like the ancestors of the restaurant, and it goes back to the three Hunter
wow.
brothers who are from Scotland that moved over
Oh,
here and started the stockyards. So it's a really cool story. So of course we had to go have lunch at the H3 Ranch
yeah.
and visit some of our Scotland heritage there. And then after that, we just explored. Like, we did a little bit of browsing in some of the stores. We went and saw the Longhorns. They have them fenced up in an area where you can go stand over there. And it's really cool. They have like trading cards for the Longhorns. So we were
Really?
talking, yeah, we were talking to some of the cowboys, the ranchers. I don't know what they go by exactly, but they have this board that has all of the cows listed on it, and you have to find the cows based on their pictures and start to pick them out. And as we were looking at him, he walks up to us and he goes, "Which one is your favorite?" And then he starts handing us their trading cards for the
Oh,
cows. So it was really fun just to get
okay.
interactive with the cows. Yeah. And then they had a petting zoo where we got chased by a goat who also bit my finger. It didn't hurt or anything. It was just like while I was feeding him, he decided to nibble on my whole hand.
Oh
And
my goodness.
then it had a mini Scottish Highland and some sheep and some other animals in there. So we went to
Oh,
the petting zoo and spent some time in there. They had a maze, a cattle pen maze. And so they had some fun little family friendly activities that you could do around the stockyards. And there's a museum that gives like the history of the stockyards. There's a rodeo there. We didn't stay for the rodeo, but if you stay and you like plan your day appropriately, you could go to the rodeo at night, which I debated on it. And then
oh,
every day, twice a day, they do a cattle drive. So we had to stay for the cattle drive. And they do this they like they used to back in the day. They take the longhorns and they drive them down the street. And it's just really cool to watch them, and those things are massive when you see
wow.
them in person and you just see the width of their horns, like
Yeah,
they're, I mean, you're talking 6 feet, 8 feet wide is how much space they're taking up as they walk down the street because their
that's
horns are
amazing.
so long.
That's crazy. So any of the stuff that you've mentioned, seeing the Longhorns, the petting zoo, is all of that free, or do each of these things have admission costs to get into them?
Great question. So we had to pay for parking at the stockyards, and I think that was like
Okay.
$25 for the day.
Yep.
The to see the horns, to like browse the shops, to just walk the whole area, there is a to see the longhorns. There is a lot of free stuff around that. Now you had
Yep.
to pay for the petting zoo. I think it was $5 a person. The cattle pen maze, I want to say, was like around $5 a person. There was one more activity there, and I can't remember what the price on it was. We didn't do it, but it's not hugely expensive
No.
to visit the stockyards. There is a lot of free stuff. Now, it's something I wouldn't plan more than 2 to 3 hours on. And I
Yep.
would plan actually probably to go either late morning and hit the cattle drive, like go right before the cattle drive, or go in the afternoon right before the cattle drive and then kind of spend the time afterwards, because we had this
Yep.
this dull moment of going at lunch and
Mm,
then
mm-hmm.
waiting for the cattle drive because I didn't want to leave and everybody was ready
Yep.
to go at 3:30, and I'm like, but the cattle drive is at 4, we can't leave now.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it was kind of just like we had to hang out for a little bit because we were already done with the stockyards.
Yeah.
So it's just
Well,
a
I
timing
love that.
piece for us.
Yeah, I love that it wasn't that much money because I mean, really, like, not only so far is this a quick trip, but it's also a cheaper trip. So it's fun to see like vacations don't always have to be thousands and thousands of dollars, right? To be really
Correct.
fun. So I love
Yes.
that. I love that.
Um, yeah, the stalkers, and that's why I really wanted to make sure we included Fort Worth as one day for our trip because
Yep.
when I was researching family things to do, it felt like there was so much more free stuff to do in Fort Worth.
Mm.
Ideally, I probably would have stayed in Fort Worth, but there weren't any
Mm.
edit hotels in Fort Worth to be able
Yep.
to use that credit. So that's why
Yeah.
we stayed in Dallas. And it's about like you're looking at 45 minutes to an hour apart from each other, too.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's no public transportation, which is why we got the rental car to get back and forth.
Okay.
Because by the time you pay for an Uber back and forth or just have a
Oh,
rental
yeah.
car, I don't know what would have been better.
For sure. And I think you're right. I didn't realize because I haven't, like, I haven't been, but I didn't realize that Dallas and Fort Worth, because we always, like it's called DFW Airport, like Dallas
Hmm.
Fort Worth. So you assume, at least maybe I am the only one that assumes that they're like right next to each other, but like 45 minutes is a long drive. So like maybe if you just did Dallas, like you could try to do like public transportation, but that's good to know that like if you're actually going to go outside of like the city center, like you really need to rent a car to do this trip.
And I didn't really find in my research public transportation options in Dallas
Yep.
anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of stuff to do in Dallas that isn't right in the heart of downtown.
Yep.
So, had it not rained, our agenda would have been very different.
Very different. Yeah. So did you
Yes.
eat dinner in Fort Worth, or did you, after you watched the cattle drive, you headed back to, did you go to the hotel then, or what did you do next?
Yes, so after we did the cattle drive, we ended up just going back to the hotel because we left really early in the morning. So we needed to just kind of have a little bit of downtime and an early night to bed. So we left Dallas, or we left Fort Worth. Unfortunately, it was rush hour because this was a
Oh
Friday.
my God. Yes.
And so it took us a little bit longer to get over to the hotel in Dallas. And we just drove over there and checked in, and then we ended up ordering a pizza that night and just staying in. We were gonna go swimming, but the hotel only had an outdoor pool and it wasn't heated.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and since it was February, I was hoping the kids could be able to swim, but we didn't swim. But the Fairmont was really, really nice. I mean, it was probably one of the
That's
nicest hotels I've
awesome.
ever stayed in. And
Oh,
because of the
fun.
edit credit with the Chase Sapphire Reserve, you get upgraded to a suite if
That's
it's
awesome.
available. So we had a
Yep.
suite and we had $100 credit a day for food and beverage, plus breakfast was included.
Ooh.
And we got a welcome amenity. So my daughter, when we checked in the hotel and walked up to the room and the welcome amenity was there, it was like these really yummy, pretty little chocolates. She said,
Oh.
she goes, that was so nice of them to leave us treats. I can't believe they did that. And I'm like, yeah, baby girl, you
Oh,
eat up.
I love
So
that.
I didn't tell her
I
it was part
love
of our
that.
package, but it was just fun to see them be so excited
Oh,
about it.
you got to
Um,
stay in more luxury hotels because that happens a lot when you stay at luxury hotels. So looks like Janelle's on my team. She likes a little fancy. She likes it fancy.
It ended up being really good, and the breakfast worked out really great because the way they did it, it's supposed to be breakfast for two, but the way they set it up is it has actually a dollar limit. So my husband's not a huge breakfast eater, so the kids and I went to breakfast and we ended up staying under that dollar limit because of their kids.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
our breakfast ended up being free each morning we were there, and then we still had that $100 credit that we got to use on top of it. So one night we ordered ice cream to the room, and I don't
Oh,
remember what else
fun.
we did with it, but yeah.
That's awesome. So then did you do anything else that first night, or that was kind of it? You just went back to the hotel, relaxed, and then kind of got up the next day and went going again.
Yeah, and we ordered pizza. We had did a cheaper night that night because lunch was kind of a big splurge. The
Yep.
H3 Ranch restaurant is a little bit more of a nicer steakhouse type
Yep.
Texas restaurant. So it was a little more expensive. So we tried to keep it really cheap for dinner.
I love that. So then you got up the next day, you did your breakfast. Did you stay in Dallas the rest of that second day then was kind of all Dallas activities?
It was, and because the weather was so awful,
Yeah.
I had to completely pivot because I had initially planned to do more like parks and playgrounds and some outdoor spaces. Because one thing I really researched was there's a lot of really cool outdoor spaces and trails to take kids
Mm.
on in the Dallas
Yeah.
area for free things to do, but the weather ended up being awful. So we got a little bit late
Mm.
start that morning, and then I found the Dallas Museum of Art is actually free
Ooh.
to visit. We are not art
Yay.
museum people, but we decided, you know what, we can still go and figure it out. And
Yeah.
if we hate it, it's free. We can leave.
Yep.
And I had already paid for and reserved a time slot to visit the Perot Museum, which is donated from the Ross Perot and his wife, their family. And it's this huge, like, nature and science museum that was our big one, like, paid activity that we did. So we already
Yeah.
had that reserved for the afternoon. So our morning, we just walked over to the Dallas Museum of Art. It was probably a block from the hotel.
Awesome.
I'd already packed our rain jackets, which I was really glad I did because we got
Yay.
soaked. And then
Oh my
got
goodness.
there. I know they had a fun little like kids art room in there, so we went and found the kids space and did some of their kids activities as a whole family, and then just walked around and explored a little bit. We weren't there very long, maybe like an hour, hour and a half at the Museum of Art, because
Yeah.
art museums just are not really our cup of tea.
Oh, I love that. I like a good art museum. I love I do like stuff like that. But I agree. It is a lot harder for kids, you know. They need to be entertained a little bit more than like look at the painting.
They need to be loud, and that was the hard thing. Like, we just wanted to be loud and we wanted to touch stuff. And there was even one
Yep.
point we walked in and I went to go take my jacket off because they had a little coat check, so I was checking all our coats, and I took my purse off and I set it down, and I didn't even know it was like a sculpture. I just thought it was this railing, and I set it down on a
Really?
sculpture, and the people
Oh
walk over and they're like, "You can't touch this." My husband's like, "This is
oh
why this
my
is a bad
gosh.
idea. We're not cut out
We
for this world."
we're not meant to be here. This is a bad idea. Oh my goodness. Does Dallas have a children's museum? Did you look? You'd think they're
I
so big, they'd have something like, you know, like St. Louis has one, you know, like you'd think they'd have like kind of a
Yeah.
cool big thing like that.
If they did, it wasn't free because
Yeah.
my intention was to try to find free things to do
Yep.
in Dallas as much as we
Yep.
could because we were kind of splurging on the Perot Museum.
Yep.
So, and it was a really short trip. Like this trip was just to get out to do something different. It wasn't
Yeah.
really going to be like a go big or, go big or go home kind of trip because we had one of those coming up for spring break in March. So this was as cheap as possible was our goal for this trip.
Yeah. I feel bad for Justin. He wanted to go south and he just got horrible weather. That's kind of
He
funny.
did.
He did.
We could have went to Chicago. Might have been worse. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I know. Maybe, I know. You never know. So I'm like, oh, poor guy. So was there anywhere you ate on that Saturday that you really liked that you can like remember or would like want to recommend to any of our listeners?
So after we left the Dallas Museum of Art, we ended up taking an Uber over to the Perot Museum. We could have walked it, but it was raining so hard that we just Ubered. We had ended up just eating lunch at the cafe in the Perot Museum, which was highly
Yeah.
overpriced and not great because that kind of stuff isn't really great.
Yep.
But because it was pouring down rain, we didn't really want to go exploring anywhere just because you don't want to go out
Hmm.
and walk around. So we just had lunch there, and then we spent the rest of the afternoon at the Perot Museum. And I want to take a minute and talk about that. It was huge. It was like 4 stories,
Oh.
completely interactive on every level. It was a mix of like
Mm.
natural history, so they had some dinosaur bones that you could see, with modern science where everything was super interactive, and they had like a space section where you can look at the stars and interact and
Oh.
learn all this stuff about space and the stars. And then they had body section where you could go and learn about how the brain works and how the human body works and like all these
Yep.
different body like things, right? They had an actual
Yeah.
brain and a spinal cord that you could see.
Oh,
Yeah, so
wow.
and then they had a section on, oh gosh, how drills work, and they had this huge, it was blown up probably like 20 to 30 times the actual size, but like drill that they use when they're drilling into the ground. They had, I don't know, we spent like probably 5 hours at the museum and closed it down. I think we
Oh,
could have stayed there
fun.
longer.
Yeah.
Um, they had a really cool play area. So they had, in the lowest level, there was a kids play area that had probably like 5 or 6 different interactive sections of jungle gym type stuff, like rock wall climbing, like water tables, but they're really cool, like sciencey water tables,
Oh,
and
fun.
climbing structures. So we spent a lot of time in the play area. And then they
Fun.
had a bigger kids play area that was all sports related,
Hmm.
where you could go through and they turned, like there was this little space that you went through and it turned whatever you did into slow motion so you could see it
Oh,
piece by piece.
fun.
So my daughter did cartwheels through the slow motion room, and then you'd go and you'd watch the video of her doing a cartwheel slow motion. And my son like threw a basketball, or I don't know.
Oh,
They went through that room probably 20 times doing different stuff.
yeah.
And then there was an interactive racing section where you could race professional athletes on a screen to see if you're faster than them. They had like, it was like a bigger kids sports activity area. So it was really just a fun place to go and spend a rainy day and
Hmm.
exploring and learning so much. They had remote control cars and like a whole engineering section. And the kids just really loved the museum. I think science museums are really cool because they're so different and unique in each city that you go to. And
Yep.
this one was so big and so different. And then just the architecture of the building itself was just really cool to look at too.
It honestly sounds like a children's museum. You know what I mean? So I think maybe that is their version of a children's museum because that sounds so much fun and it reminds me so much of like the children's museum that we have here. All of like the
Yeah.
different interactive areas. That's really cool. So what did you tell us? I can't remember what the cost was per person for that museum. Do you remember?
So the price of it was $25 for adult and $15 for kids.
That's not bad. That's pretty normal, I think,
Yeah.
especially
And
for how long
then
you were there.
and then they have add-ons you can do too. So we added on one of their 3D movies, which was $8
Hmm.
a person.
Yeah.
So total we spent a little over 100, and then you add in lunch. I don't know what we spent on lunch there, but it was way overpriced.
Yep.
So we probably
That's
spent
awesome.
like 200 to 250 total in the museum that day because we were there so long we
Yep.
got some snacks too.
Yeah. That's awesome. So then after the museum, did you just go back to the hotel again and relax?
We walked across the street to a restaurant. We went to like a Tex-Mex restaurant because we're in Texas,
Hmm.
so we wanted to just grab
Yep.
something that was going to be quick and easy that we could get into. Nothing fancy. It was really good. It actually ended up being one of our cheaper meals of the trip, and it was right across the
Yeah.
street from the museum and really easy to go to. At that point, the rain had kind of subsided a little bit too, so it was easier to walk. And then from there, we did end up taking a lift back to the hotel because it was already dark at that point, and it
Um,
was probably like 4-ish blocks. So we probably could have walked, but just being dark and not knowing the city and having the kids,
yep.
just decided to take a lift. Yeah. And at that time, it was probably like 8 o'clock when we were
Yeah.
done with everything. So we just ended up, calling it a night and going to bed because it had been a pretty full day.
Yeah. Well, didn't you say that with the edit credit, you had $100 a day in a food and beverage credit? So did you use that at breakfast or was that for like a different meal during the day?
Okay, so the edit credit, the way that it works is you get breakfast included plus $100 to use for your entire stay.
Oh, the
So,
entire stay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes. So we ended up going back to the hotel and we just ordered dessert through room service. And
Oh,
then
fun.
we got some drinks from the bar, is what we did, and just took them back up to the room to use up that $100 credit.
Oh, nice. I like that. That's kind of a fun little extra treat. where
Yeah.
you wouldn't normally spend money on any of those things because you're trying to go cheap. So that's a fun little add-on that makes a
Yes.
trip feel a little more fancy than you originally planned it to be?
But room service always makes it feels more fancy. So
It does. Oh, I love room service. It's my favorite. Oh, I love it. You
room
can put
service
on
is
your
so
robe.
overpriced.
Yeah. No. Well, yes, but if you are savvy like us, you know ways to get it for free. So that
Yeah.
makes it. We can get fancy, $100 a person breakfast and stuff when we know the right way to do it. I
Yes,
love it.
we can.
Now you have me missing it. I'm like, oh, I want room service breakfast so bad. That sounds so good right now. Okay, so what do we have left? Is it just your last day? So is Sunday your last day, or did you fly home Monday?
No, it's Sunday. We just did a
Oh, it's
2 night,
Sunday.
3 day
Yeah, it
trip.
is
Yeah,
a quick.
we left really early Friday morning. Sunday we flew home, but we didn't fly home until later in the day on Sunday. So that morning, the rain had pretty much subsided. It was still pretty cloudy, but they have this park in downtown Dallas called the Clyde Warren Park. And it is one of the most unique parks I've ever seen. They had a really cool playground that had all these climbing structures, and it had very unique merry-go-rounds, but they weren't traditional merry-go-rounds. They were one of them was one that was like a table that turned really wobbly and at an angle, and you could just lay on
Oh,
it and be spun around. And the other one was like this climbing structure type piece that you needed to climb and hold on, and it spun around at an angle. And I swear my
yep.
daughter spent an hour on that thing. So we spent a
Ah,
lot of time in that fun little playground that they had.
yep.
And then as you walked down throughout the rest of the park, one of the streets was lined in food trucks. And then they had this other section, they had a big green space. And then they had this other section that had there was like a little library with books. There was like life size Connect Four, and you could play bean
Fun.
bags, and you could do they had like this life-size Tetris game and other building blocks and stuff. So we spent some
Yep.
time down there just like playing those games, hanging out, doing the building blocks, and then just
Hmm.
walked the rest of the park. And then they have a free trolley that goes through downtown Dallas. So we hopped on the trolley and took a little trolley ride through downtown, which I think they said takes about an hour if you do the
Hmm.
whole route. Went back to the park and then grabbed lunch, walked back to the hotel, checked out, and left. So that morning was pretty
Yeah.
low
Yeah.
key, but it was
Yep.
fun because we just got to like really do what the kids want to do, which is all they want to do is play for the most part,
Yep.
right? So we just let them play in the
So
park
true.
and then did the little trolley ride to see the city a little bit more, but not really have to walk it or pay or drive or do any of that.
Yep. So is there anything that you would do differently if you could do this trip again? I know the weather kind of shook things up for you, but now that you've been, would you kind of go to the same places and do the same things if you were recommending it to somebody, or how would you kind of change the trip if you could?
So I would still go to all the same places that we
Yep.
went to, but I would add on like my ideal itinerary was we go there on Friday. We do some of the parks on Friday. Like I wanted to do the trolley ride in the Clyde Warren Park on Friday and keep it a little bit more low key.
Yep.
Saturday was going to be our Fort Worth day, and I had a whole lot more scheduled for Fort Worth. Like I'm going to pull up my list here really fast. Sorry, let me find it. Where did I put it? If I can find it. Where did it go? Dallas.
You've
Okay.
lost it.
I know, right? So there is in Fort Worth, there's this place called the Water Gardens, which
Ooh.
is like you're supposed to go to and at dusk and see it a little bit more at sunset, and it's free to go to, and it's these really cool like there are different levels and tiers of gardens of like fountains,
Yep.
and they light them up different colors at night. So that was one thing we didn't get to do that I really wish we would have done. But it was just a
Okay.
long travel day and we were tired. Um, the in Fort Worth, there's also the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, which you can go and learn about how money is made. And it's a little bit more interactive, which is one thing I also wanted to do that we didn't get to do. And in Dallas, there is a couple more like big parks and places to go see. So there's the Reunion Tower Geo Deck, which is a viewpoint. You can go all the way to the top of it and look out and see all of the cities. That was on my list that we ended up not doing. And then there's a giant eyeball, which is just like a sculpture of a
Oh,
massive eyeball in Dallas, which is supposed to be a thing to go see. Which would have been kind of fun to go see the giant eyeball. And of course, like there's a couple of different like plazas and parks throughout downtown
yeah,
Dallas that I wanted to go to. So I had a little bit more on my list that we just didn't make it to, but that's okay. That's what travel
yeah,
is, right? Sometimes we have to
yep.
adapt and just go with it.
Yeah, and next time, I mean, that's what's so nice too about points and miles is we can go back again another time and then you can do all the stuff that you didn't get to see and hopefully have better weather the next time.
Yeah.
I
I will
love it.
say Dallas was a really great just weekend getaway.
Yep.
Um, I don't know if it's somewhere I would go for like an entire week.
Hmm.
Unless I wanted to spend more money and do some of the bigger activities. Like there are more different
Yep.
museums and places to go that you can go in Dallas that are very family friendly, but they all, I mean, it just adds up so fast. And so
Yeah.
for us trying to keep an affordable family weekend, plus food in Dallas was very expensive. Typically, I
Yep.
budget about $100 to $150 a day for food when we travel. And I felt
Hmm.
like we went over our food budget almost every day we were there, and we even had
Mm.
breakfast included. So meals were just
Yeah.
really expensive in Dallas.
Expensive.
And we
Hmm.
didn't go to fancy restaurants.
Yeah, that's crazy. So before we wrap everything up, do you want to give us a little breakdown of the points that you used and how much cash you spent out of pocket on everything?
Yeah, I absolutely can. Okay, so when I went to use my points for this trip, because I had a stash of both American and Atmos miles, I ended up booking through Atmos on American Metal. Now, what that means is a partner airline. So the price for American Airlines for me to get my family from Nashville to Dallas was going to be 9,000 points per person each way. I was able
Hmm.
to find that exact same flight on Atmos for 9,000 points round trip per person.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yes. So that was the power of partner airlines on this one. So I booked this total for 36,000 miles for my family of four, and it ended up being $144 out of pocket for our flights. And that's only because when you book on partner airlines, there's a little bit more fees involved.
Yep.
So that's where the extra expense came. Whereas normally, if I would have booked on American, it would have only been the $5.60.
Yep.
Um, and then my credits I stacked for our hotel was the $250 edit credit through my Chase Sapphire Reserve, the $500 travel credit that we earned as part of our welcome offer on that Chase Sapphire Reserve. I did fill in with 2,000 Chase Ultimate Rewards just to kind of bring that out of pocket price down to $11.86.
That's amazing. And you only used 2,000 chase points. I mean, it wasn't you used, 20,000 or anything. I mean, literally, that's isn't 2,000 points 20 bucks. I mean, that's amazing. That's
Yeah,
crazy that your out of pocket was so low because you strategically stacked those credits together to get it as low as possible. That's
it was. And let me give the
amazing.
cash value of that flight. Um, all right, all in for this weekend, out of pocket. Now, this includes the 144 on flights, our hotel at the end of the day, it did end up being $217.95, and that's because we had parking. Parking overnight was kind of expensive. I think it was
Yep.
$60 a night. And then
Yeah.
we had with the one downfall of the edit credit and the food and beverage pieces is your taxes and gratuity are not included. So when we ordered room
Oh.
service at the bar and at the restaurant each morning for breakfast, we of course have to pay taxes and tip the staff. So that wasn't included. So our total at the hotel
Oh.
ended up being $217. Our rental car, what we spent on transportation for this is rental car lifts and parking at the stockyards, was 271 and 64
Mm-hmm.
cents. Food and attractions were around 500. So our grand total out of pocket for this trip was $1,100, which comes out to about $300 per person for 2 nights and 3 days.
Awesome.
Had we paid full price for our hotel and our flights, it would have been our hotel and flights value of that would have been $2,269.86, not counting any
Awesome.
food, rental or any extras. So we've already saved a ton of money just by being able to use
Yes.
points and miles.
100%. And really, like, if you didn't have points and miles, you wouldn't have, well, I'm just assuming you wouldn't have taken the trip because, like, that's a lot of
Nope.
money. Like, I mean, another $2,000 for only a 3-day trip. Like, that's a lot of money. So that's why I feel like the points and miles aspect of it is so important because it just goes to show you that like those trips that like are kind of spur of the moment, a little more like quick, fun getaway, like they are really expensive if you don't have points and miles. And that gives you the ability to be able to like out of the blue, like you said, like December, let's go somewhere fun. Normally if you didn't have points and miles, you'd be like, oh, maybe we'll go an hour away from home and go do an activity and then come home because there's no way you're going to spend $3,000 to go somewhere for 2 nights, you know?
And I mean, I have my strict rule. If I pay, I don't go.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we really only paid 144 for flights and
Yep.
$11.86 for the
Uh-huh.
hotel. Everything
Yep.
else you're going to pay no matter what, right? Like,
100%.
granted, the rental
Yep.
car was an added expense, but those things are so much easier to take on for food and car and attractions when you're getting your flights and your hotels for so cheap.
Yep.
And that's why I have my strict rule. If I pay, I don't go. If I'm going to be paying for flights or paying for a hotel full
Yep.
price, I will absolutely not take the trip because I want
Yep.
to spend my money on the things that matter. And I still try
Yep.
to be as frugal as possible and find as much free stuff because I don't like to
Yep.
spend a bunch of money.
Me either. Yep. So do you have anything else you want to share with us, Joy, before we wrap it up today?
Yeah, the one other thing that we did that made our trip a little extra special too is right before we left in Dallas is a great airport for lounges. And since I
Yes.
don't
I
have
love
the
it.
Venture X, I didn't get to go to the Capital One Lounge, but we did use my City Strata Elite, which comes with 4 passes a year to the Admirals Club, the AA Lounge. Since we were flying
Ooh.
AA, we got to take advantage of that, and it was huge. Like we walked in that lounge.
Ooh.
First off, kids, if you have that credit card, kids don't count as a pass. So they're included. So it only took
Oh.
2 of my 4 passes for my husband and I to both go. And the kids were free. They have a kids room, which I'm really learning to love the kids room and
Really?
lounges because you can go in there, there's nobody in there. It's usually a big space. It has a TV.
Oh,
And you can
fun.
be as loud as you want in the kids' room, and you're
Yes.
not going to interrupt anybody. So we really have enjoyed being able to take advantage of kids' rooms and lounges, and not all of them have it. But this lounge
True.
in DFW was huge, and the food was, I mean, it was fine. They had some options,
Mm.
whatever, but they had like what we've noticed, we've been in AA lounges a couple times now, is they will sometimes bring out like a little chef station. So that day we were there, they
Yes.
had a guacamole station where you could like make your own guacamole and he would make it for you. So my son
Fun.
loved that. So there's always just fun little things in the AA lounge on top of the kids' room that just make it a really great experience to go hang out before your flight takes off.
I love that. I haven't been in an Admirals Club lounge yet. I didn't realize that the kids didn't count. So then you can literally go to the lounge twice a year, right?
Yep.
So that's amazing. I like that perk that I didn't realize. So you and I have been together to the Capital One Lounge in Denver. So how did you think the food compared at the Capital One Lounge compared to the Admirals Club? Do you remember?
It's very different. So
It's different. Okay.
the yes, the Capital One Lounge A has a full bar. Admirals Club doesn't. It's more of like a limited bar that you can choose from, and
Yep.
then if you want something more, you can pay for it. They also have a full menu that you can order from if you want to pay for other items outside of what's included. Now, what they did have, the biggest difference is the Capital One Lounge has like the cute little individual size
Yep.
containers. They
Yeah.
have more options. This one was really only like a soup. I'm trying to remember what they had when we went. Like a couple different salad options. They had some fruit that you could grab, and they had like one hot item with a side. So it wasn't a ton of food that you could choose from. Now there was
Yep.
enough that we can make work for us. Like my daughter, if it's the right kind of salad, she will eat the crap out of a salad. So we
Yep.
had we
I
had
love that.
she definitely filled up on salads. And then I think that night we were there, it actually was a pasta dish of some sort. So it worked out fine because my kids would eat the pasta. And then the guacamole station's a hit. Like we love guacamole, so we had that, the
Yes, me
guacamole
too.
station. So it worked out really well that time for us to go to the lounge before we hopped on our plane to fly home.
That's awesome. Oh, I love it. I'm so glad you guys got to go. The lounge is like one of my favorite parts of travel is the lounges. So like that's what I get most excited for is a good lounge.
It makes such a difference,
It
especially
does.
when you can save so much money on a lounge because if you can find food there, at
Yep.
least like if your kids won't eat something there, you can still find something there to eat as an adult, so that's less that you're spending money on. But then
Yep.
it gives you a place, especially when they have a kids room. It gives you a place to go hang out with your kids and
Hmm.
not be in the way of people or be in the way of like dealing with people at the gate or running around bumping into people at the gate or annoying people at the
Hmm.
gate. It just
Yeah.
gives you that extra space and then you can wait right until boarding and then
Yep.
go just walk pretty much right on the plane.
Yes. Yes. I know. You guys haven't gotten to use the Sapphire lounges yet as a family, have you?
No, we have not.
No.
I plan on later this year because we're going to be at both JFK and Philly when we do Denmark in the fall. So I'm
Yep.
hoping we can hit the Sapphire Lounge for that time.
Yes, you have to because they have at least the Sapphire Lounge at LGA has a kids room. So,
Oh,
and
really?
they have like an actual like little kids room, and then they have another room that has, oh, what was it? A record player, and they had records, and it had, I don't
Ooh.
know if it was a pinball machine or what. I can't remember what it was, but they had a few different like games that you could play too. So I'm guessing JFK is going to be very similar, the Sapphire Lounge to LGA. So that would
Ooh.
be really fun because you have the Sapphire Reserve. So it
Yes.
would be fun for all of you to get to go together into that
Ooh, I would like
lounge
that.
because
Yeah.
that's one of my favorites. I love the Sapphire Lounge, definitely rivals the Capital One Lounge. I like Capital One better still because of the grab and go aspect of the food. You know, they even give you the bag. They want you to take it, right? Like they want you to
Yeah.
take the food. Like I love that. And Sapphire's not like that. Like they want you to sit and relax and like, you know, you got to wrap stuff up in like napkins if you want to take it in your bag or whatever. But I do like it. I do really like the Sapphire Lounge too. So,
You know what we did talk about, which is something I'm not really opposed to, is because we have the Venture, not the Venture X. Long story, but Capital One will not approve us for the Venture X. That's why you need to get the Capital One Venture or Venture X very early on in your points and miles journey. Because if you
yep,
get too many credit cards or have too much accessible credit to your name, they will no longer approve you, which
yep.
is where we're at. So one thing that we did talk about though is because with our venture, you can pay to get in the Capital One Lounge. It's $45 a person. So we were thinking,
Hmm.
like if we paid for one of us to go into it
Yeah,
with our card, then they can just grab a whole bunch of grab-and-go items
Yep.
and make it worth it for
Mm.
the rest of us. Because I remember they had, like, the sandwiches and they
Yes,
had
and the
everything.
cookies, and they had
Yes.
like the bottled water and
Yeah.
everything, everything.
And that's one thing they didn't have at the Admiral's Lounge. They did not have a grab-and-go option. They had, like, a little refrigerator with drinks, and it had, like, water and sodas and stuff in it, but you had to pay for it if you wanted to take it and grab and go.
Oh,
So I didn't even
really?
look at the price of it.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think totally that like $45 could easily be worth it. And honestly, that's why I'm not closing my Venture X. Even though it is a $395 annual fee, I can still go into the lounge and grab stuff for everybody. And you're
Mhm.
100% right. I mean, literally, you go get like a crappy hot dog and a drink, and that's $15 a person.
Or
So I
more.
mean, or more. So you're at like 60
Yeah.
bucks right there. You know what I mean? Like you might as well get, like Joy was saying, they have sandwiches, they have cookies. You literally can get a full meal from grab and go. Of course, the sit down food is really, really good. And like in a perfect world, it would be amazing if the whole family could go in, but that's just not the case anymore. But like
Yeah.
it still is worth it to either, like Joy said, pay the 45, did you say 45, right?
It's
45 for
45 a person, yeah.
45. Yeah. One person goes in, or if you can get approved for the Venture X, to have someone have the Venture X because it still is totally worth it, especially if you live like in Dallas or Denver or like one of these airport hubs that has a Capital One lounge, and every time you fly, you can use it. 100%, it's worth the money. I love
Yeah.
it. I wish we lived closer to it, but I do. Like for me, a part of the lounge is a part of the journey. I pick my airports a lot of times for my layovers for airports where I know I'm going to have a really good lounge experience because it makes the trip 100 times better to get to go to a fun lounge than to just sit in the airport for 3 hours doing
That's
nothing.
true.
Yeah.
I will say I love one of my favorite layover airports is Miami because there's a plenty of lounges to choose from, like under Priority Pass
Yeah.
and every airline and everything. But they're playgrounds. Like that's another piece that we've
Ooh,
started
I love
looking at
that.
too as playgrounds when you travel.
Yep.
Because I mean my daughter's 7, right? Like so she's on that cusp of we still gotta make her move between flights because she can't sit still very long. So
Yep.
we go and find the playgrounds. And there's a lot of really cool airport playgrounds, but one of my favorites so far has been Miami. It's just such a great
Ooh.
airport playground.
I have to add that to my list. I haven't been there yet. I haven't been there yet.
I'll
Ah,
take a layover in Miami
yes.
any day, especially if
Yay.
I'm flying American because there's so many lounges in the American wing of
Ooh,
Miami.
I love that. Ooh. Well, thank you, Joy, for telling us all about Dallas. I hope that some of our listeners will recreate your trip. It's so fun.
Yes. And let us know if you
Yeah.
guys have any questions. And in the show notes, what we can do as well, I know we kind of went down a little rabbit hole of lounges in the Venture. There is an
Yep.
elevated offer on the Venture right now, so we can go ahead and tag that in the show notes for y'all if you're interested in grabbing that card. And then I can tag the Chase Sapphire Reserve, which is the main card that I use to plan this trip with because that really allowed us to get that bougie hotel room that don't normally book because I'm not a bougie person.
That's okay. That's totally okay. Well, I loved our conversation today because it's such a good reminder that travel doesn't always have to be big to be meaningful. A quick long weekend can still give you quality time, new experiences, and those fun family memories we all want more of. So if you've been putting off travel because you think you need more time, more money, or a bigger plan, maybe this is your sign to start smaller. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.